Welcome to the 9 mistakes every investor in regenerative agriculture and food should avoid. I'm Koen van Zijen. I'm the host of the Investing in Regenerative Agriculture and Food podcast. You can find it in any podcast player. Just search for Investing in Regenerative Agriculture. And in the podcast, we try to answer this question: how to put money to work in regenerating soil, people, communities, and ecosystems while growing a lot of nutrient-dense food and generating a fair return. We've so far interviewed over 100 people: investors, farmers, entrepreneurs, agtech entrepreneurs, food companies, scientists, etc., which is over 100 hours of audio if you're interested to listen to that. We asked many listeners of the podcast and investors we know personally, what are the 9 mistakes to avoid when investing in regenerative agriculture and food? We asked them, what is the one thing they wish they knew before making their first investment? We're going to take you through 9 tips, mistakes to avoid of real investors in regenerative agriculture and food. Let's get started. First up is Fernando Russo, who is the head of the family office Meraki Impact, and he touches upon a very important point. Organic and regenerative are 2 very different things, and the latter is where the real impact is. So this is by no means to question the impact organic has and the organic movement has, especially the original one or at the beginning, on the agriculture movement, but we also see the limitations. And I think this is a good moment to share what is regenerative agriculture, if you can find a specific definition, and what's the difference between regenerative, organic, biodynamic, sustainable agriculture, etc. So I found a definition, but from Terragenesis, which is a system of farming principles and practices that increases biodiversity, enriches soils, improves watersheds, and enhances ecosystem services. The issue with finding a definition for regenerative agriculture is that, by definition, there is no definition. This is a journey. Regenerative agriculture is a set of practices, as we saw before, that farmers are implementing on their land. And they can do more practices, less practices, but doesn't make them more regenerative or less regenerative. It's not a means to an end. It's not a 0 or 1. It's not a binary question. Not like organic, because organic is a certification principle. You either are or are not organic. I think it's easier to describe it with this slide, which on one side there's degenerative agriculture, which is most of current modern agriculture, which is mining the soil, destroying a lot of life in it and most of biodiversity. On the other side, there's regenerative, whatever that is. So it's definitely a continuum. A lot of this thinking comes from an article that my friend Ethan Soloviev wrote. I would definitely urge you to find out. If you search for agriculture, a continuum, you will find the Medium post. And I will show you just 1 second. It's very busy, the slide, but please find the full article of Ethan. Next up is Joe Beard, is an impact investor in California and a cheese entrepreneur. In the early stages, most early developers and investors were very idealistic and saw a business manager or commercial person almost as a necessary evil. I think we suffered a lot from this, seeing that regenerative agriculture, it has to be a business. If we want to invest, that's the purpose of the podcast, how to invest, how to put money to work. Not necessarily because I feel that investing is the most important thing in the world, but I think the role of capital can speed up the implementation of regenerative practices. And we need money for that. Cover crops cost a lot of money. Planting trees costs a lot of money. Changing equipment costs a lot of money. With investing, we can speed up that process, but we need to do it well. And I think here there's an interesting clash between the very idealistic regenerative agriculture world and the very commercial agriculture world. And as Joe Beard discovered in the process of making his first investments in the space, that you actually need both. You need both, and that's the second part of the quote. And you see this partnership, in this case, between Rose, who just stepped down as the CEO of Patagonia, but grew Patagonia incredibly, together with Yvonne, who was the original founder of Patagonia and currently still owner. That combination of a very hardcore business mind with a strong purpose is what we need a lot more in regenerative agriculture and food. So look for that, because otherwise we're greenwashing, we're wasting money, we're wasting resources, time, and we're wasting brain power, honestly, of people that should be doing something more useful. It's a similar point that Paul McMahon of SLM Partners, who we've interviewed and who wrote a great white paper on the investment case of regenerative or ecological agriculture, as he calls it. Not every inspiring story of land regeneration, you see these beautiful pictures of left and right, before and after, or neighbor and our operation, is an interesting or a good investment case. You still have to look for, obviously, but this is something just that I would love to repeat because it goes wrong very, very often. Like, we're applying all these regenerative practices, so we are an interesting investment. No, you need the right operators, strong markets, efficient supply chains, good reporting, etc., etc., etc. It needs to be, coming back to the previous point, a good and interesting business. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult to raise capital, which is okay. If you're running your farm, if you're running your company, if you're running without outside capital, perfect. But if you're going to go into the market to raise, which is fine, you need to make sure it's run like a proper, efficient business. The next point comes from a European family office that studied up to 20 funds that are all claiming to invest in regenerative agriculture, while most of them actually invest in conventional organic. It's not bad per se, but you cannot claim that you're applying regenerative practices, that you're rebuilding soil if you're simply investing in organic. There are many organic farms that are not building soil at all. And the fact that these funds are claiming to be in regenerative agriculture is definitely a problem. Second issue here is the fund model. Many cases, 10-year funds, many are fairly high leveraged to improve returns. What comes back time and time again in the podcast is that we need other investment vehicles. We need longer, potentially evergreen, as in this case, this family office is mentioning. We need structures that can hold land longer, that can really regenerate it, because it might take 15 years to really, really, really get going. You see results in maybe in 5 and in 10, but the real value is created after 15 or 20 years. Like our friends at Common Land are saying, when they are stepping into a landscape, they're doing it for at least 20 years. So remember, this is our long-term investments for generations, as this family office is saying. Then looking at Iroquois Valley Farms, Dave Miller, we've interviewed one of their people actually, so definitely find the interview in the podcast. Here, they're making an interesting, here they make a very interesting point. You don't only have to cooperate or only raise from or only interact with investors that are putting their money to work, that want a monetary return. There are many entities in this world that are looking to put money to work, that are looking to help, that are looking mostly for the impact return. So there's actually a lot of opportunity to share risk, like they say, to grow further, to blend capital, which is something that we don't look at enough. There is a lot of money out there that is looking for impact returns, for non-financial returns, or maybe some financial returns, but is willing to de-risk certain things, etc., etc. So Dave makes a very excellent point here, that you definitely need to work with a lot of non-profit, public entities, and charitable sectors, because there is a lot of money available there. And then a point that I always love, in this case from Anne Corrine, what is happening in the soil? It's something that I never imagined that I would be spending so much time on, but it's absolutely fascinating of what's happening in the soil. And for every investor, what's very interesting with this movement of soil farmers that are focused mostly on building their soils, is that you can spend hours talking about the soil without talking about their crops, for instance, because they're sort of in service, obviously, of cash flow, because they need to sell, etc. But they're in service of building soil, and what they grow depends on the context and depends mostly on what they need to grow to regenerate their soil. So this point is absolutely key. Go deep on soil, go deep when you do due diligence, when you ask questions on the great mystery, opportunity, and the great magic of what's healthy soil can and could be. Brendan makes an excellent point here of Mad Agriculture and the Perennial Fund, which we've interviewed a number of times. Like, the world is awash with money. There's a lot of it. What we need are, the world is awash with money. There's a lot of it. What we need is smart structures, fundable projects. We need the infrastructure to put this money to work. It's not always the answer, just putting more money to it. We need to look much deeper. And I think they have a very interesting approach that basically takes a 360 approach to investing and partnering with farmers to help them through the transition, looking at markets, looking at knowledge and peer knowledge, and then looking at capital. I think those three are very interesting. If you look at markets, if you help farmers to access markets, if you help farmers with knowledge, and if you help farmers with the right type of investment, you create a very interesting symbiotic relationship. And of course, the food system starts with the stewards of the land, which means the farmers. Like, you need, if you're interested in this space, you want to avoid these mistakes, go and talk to farmers, go and hang out, go and spend time, go and ask questions and listen, be humble, because you will learn a lot. If you want to know more about investing in regenerative agriculture and food, you can follow our online course. Either go to investinginregenerativeagriculture.com/course or find the link below. This course will teach you to understand the opportunities. This course won't teach you shit. If you want to know more about investing in regenerative agriculture and food, you can follow our online course. Either go to investinginregenerativeagriculture.com/course or find the link below. This course will teach you how to understand the opportunities, how to get to know the main players, how to learn about the main trends, and how to evaluate new investment opportunities, what kind of questions to ask, etc. If you're active in the space, this course will teach you how to, I have no idea what